So my name is Aditya Iyer. I am a state correspondent for Hindustan Times, which is a national newspaper in India. And what I cover is I essentially cover the state of Tamil Nadu, which is the southernmost state of India.
Tell me what the press conditions are like in India and then how you feel they are just like in general, like for you.
Mm-hmm. The press conditions aren't particularly great here. It comes down to a case by case thing, but India, I believe it was one of the worst countries in terms of freedom of expression or freedom of the press. I believe that was there's that International Organization of Journalists.
Yes.
I think that most recent report, I forget exactly what the position that India came in as, but it was one of the worst. And the way that press conditions are here really varies from publication to publication. Depends on the state you are in, and it depends on the medium and, more importantly, the language that you work in.
Mm-hmm.
So, in India, there are 23 official languages, far more than that unofficially, and each one will have a corresponding, TV channel or a newspaper. And so what the vernacular presses we call them, the English media calls them, what they face is sometimes much worse than, say, what we have to face.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of trying to stop articles from coming out or trying to attack journalists. In fact, a colleague of mine was actually murdered for an article last year, end of last year. He worked for Hindustan, which is a Hindi, basically the Hindi version of the Hindustan Times that comes out in the north of India.
Yeah.
And he was working in Uttar Pradesh, and he was murdered there. Now, those are the conditions in Uttar Pradesh. Several journalists have been murdered over the years there because of the conditions, both socially, politics, crime, how all they intermingle there. It's different in the south. In Tamil Nadu, for example, press intimidation has largely been through defamation cases, particularly criminal defamation. So it's quite ironic, actually, because you're calling from the US. The First Amendment to your Constitution was to protect freedom of expression.
Yeah.
Ironically, the First Amendment to our Constitution was the opposite. It was in 1961, Nehru and Sardar Patel placed, I think it's called, reasonable restrictions on freedom of expression. And of course, that's open to interpretation. And over the years, that means you get criminal defamation and civil defamation suits. Former Chief Minister of this state I report from, J. Jayalalitha,
yes.
She died in December. And she basically, it was one of her tools that she used throughout a 20-year plus career, was filing criminal defamation suits against journalists, both Tamil and English. She filed more than 6,000. And a lot of it was just like, don't investigate allegations of corruption or bureaucratic inefficiency or stealing money or this or that. It was essentially for that. There are other states, as I said, it really varies state by state basis. There are other states where the press freedom conditions are quite good, actually. Well, I wouldn't say good, but comparatively better. I don't think there's any state where you can say good.
Yeah.
And then there are other states where law enforcement officials get involved. Chhattisgarh, for example, is a state that until recently, the guy in charge of the police there was notorious for basically insulting journalists openly in press conferences and basically threatening them. Because Chhattisgarh, India has had an insurgent group known as the Maoists, who are basically militant communists.
Yeah.
We call them Naxalites, is another way to describe them, because Naxalbari is the town in which they first started forming up. And so they're there across essentially what's known as the Red Corridor, which stretches from the south all the way to central India. And so in those areas where there's guerrilla fighting and things like that going on, the police and the armed forces have additional powers in order to combat them, but often there's an abuse of said powers. And that's there in similar conflict areas in India. In Kashmir, for example, when there's security forces, in the northeast as well, when there's equally people, the army having a Special Forces Act, you get that. So the press conditions aren't particularly great here. I think the other thing is the actual press, how we handle things here.
Yeah.
There isn't really a sense of unity in the way that, I'm seeing a unity in the US press, especially after Trump became president. My condolences for that.
Yeah, thank you.
But there isn't really a concerted unity or anything amongst that. We have councils and bodies like the Press Council of India, the Press Trust of India, things like that, but they're really more for show. Mm-hmm. There's not really any. But of course, that's an organizational thing. In terms of actual journalists, there have been a lot of marches and a lot of organization rallies and protest marches that we've been conducting after reports of journalists being attacked, for example, or physically intimidated or harassed or trolled online, and death threats, things like that. Mm-hmm. So as a fraternity, we're on a good terms, but in terms of an organization superstructure, we don't really have that.
Yeah. From what research I saw, it doesn't seem like the police are very helpful in terms of violence. Am I right or no? Just because I read okay, journalist is threatened or there's death or something, and then I see the police either hide it up or cover it up or they don't do anything about it. Is it something like that, or is it like you said, it depends state by state?
Incidents of violence against journalists, it depends on the pressure that comes. So for example, a journalist who, give you a perfect example, there's an independent journalist in Chennai who's been facing a lot of online intimidation and harassment because she's published a series of investigative articles on the beach sand mining mafia.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they're very politically well connected, and I mean that's how they've thrived for the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
And so she submitted complaints saying, I'm facing death threats, I need police protection. She got police protection. Mm-hmm. But if it was, say, a Tamil journalist or a Hindi journalist or a Kannada journalist or something like that, there might have been a different story because they're not as well known, or there aren't people on social media signing petitions and, sending petitions and letters to the commissioner saying, you have to protect this woman.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Okay.
As I said, it varies. But on the whole, I'd say, the police aren't particularly interested in protecting journalists.
All the research that I've read is that, they have a lot of heavy censorship. Do you ever feel like you're being censored by the way that you have to tell a story a certain way? Is that it just depends on the organization again?
No, it depends on the location more in that sense. So essentially, the censorship happens when it's specifically dealing... The prime minister that we have is a guy named Narendra Modi, and his party is the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. And he's basically a very right-wing, very populist, highly populist leader. And, the sort of ideology of that party is basically a Hindu version of fascism. Mm-hmm. Ultra-nationalism, it's called Hindutva. So the idea is only Hindus should be in this country. And even that is a specific type of Hinduism. Because I'm an atheist, but when I was... I was born into a Hindu family, but a Tamil Hindu family. So the way we practice things and the holidays and what we do is completely different in the north, which is where Modi and Hindutva really sprang from.
Yeah.
So because I report from Tamil Nadu, I never really bump into any issue where I have to censor things because I work for a North Indian news organization, essentially.
Yeah.
But I have friends who, do work in the north, in Uttar Pradesh and Gujarat and places like this, and they've had to not had to censor things, but they find it extremely difficult to pitch certain articles that are, say, especially critical of the ruling regime, things like that.
Okay.
And often we get, the editors do, they get, complaints saying, yeah, you've been criticizing, this fiscal policy or this policy a bit too much, I think you should ease up a bit. And that's there with every organization. Now, in India, we have what's known as legacy media, which is essentially all of the newspapers, most of the newspapers and things like that. And they're known as that because actually most of the newspapers here were established during the freedom struggle, the independence movement to quit India, all of this stuff. And they're known as legacy media. A lot of them are, owned by industrial groups or blocks or conglomerates, and so you have that conflict of interest, where you essentially have the owner is actually an industrialist who wants to be on particular good terms with the prime minister, so that hand in hand things work out. It's the same. It's a crisis that we as a profession are facing across the country. It's not unique to India. Across the world. It's not just unique to India. But whereas you have specific online platforms like, say, Scroll, The Wire, The Lady's Finger, things like that in English. In Tamil, you have Arve Patagam, which is independent. In Hindi, you have, Dainik Bhaskar, all of these things. And numerous things in other languages. I can't remember them, but because they're purely online and they're relatively independent and they're not part of like a industrial organization, they haven't been owned by any industrialist, they can be as critical as they want.
Okay.
So it's not censorship in the sense of, say, the Chinese press or North Korea or anything like that, certainly. But it's basically pressure.
Okay.
It's basically pressure, and it basically becomes a bit difficult to push certain articles across, depending on who's in charge. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that the pressure conditions are changing in any way, like improving or getting worse, based on like the politics?
It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's sort of like we're facing a severe challenge. It's sort of akin to what the U.S. press, or really press across the world, says. You have the rise of this right wing. Sort of, even to call them fascist is misleading, because it's highly right wing populist things. And of course, the problem is, much like Trump, Modi doesn't pretend, he doesn't bother saying fake news. He just straight away ignores it. Whereas Trump obviously, tweets and does all of this stuff. But that's a general thing, because it's like, as a press, the point of the press is to always be skeptical of those who are in authority, what authority and power structures are telling you, and to critique that and to verify what they're saying. But what do you do when that said same authority structure just ignores completely what you do? How do you negotiate that new relationship? That is the challenge aspect, or rather the negative aspect of what I see is happening. In terms of the pros, it's not unified, and certainly it varies from organization to organization. There are some organizations that are more than happy to. There is a Hindi word chamcha, which is basically ass kisser. Basically, they're more than happy to be that to the ruling government. But then there are others, and there are individuals who are completely the opposite way, and so you're seeing them perhaps articulate themselves a bit more. More and more people coming out, journalists, and writing and trying to be critical and be fair. The problem is much the discourse has sort of completely swung to the right side. Okay. So in India, you either support Modi and you're fine, or you criticize Modi, and that means you are a Pakistani, you are an anti-national, you are you are a libtard, you're an aptard. There's a party called the Aam Aadmi Party, so that's where aptard comes from.
Yeah.
You're all sorts of things. Words I'm not going to repeat here. All sorts of things. And it's sort of a similar abuse that I see U.S. journalists facing similar abuse from trolls and stuff online when they write something against Trump and that sort of thing. It's a similar thing, but much more entrenched here, because it's only started for you. We've been dealing with this since 2014.
Yeah.
And Modi's winning state by state, so it looks like we're going to have to deal with him for a lot longer, because it doesn't look like he's going to lose the next general election. Mm-hmm. You also have a political vacuum in the country, which is also the reason of his rise. There is no one to oppose him for various reasons. So those are the things. There are pros and cons. There is a challenge, but people are rising up to it. There isn't a united front,
okay,
which is a severe issue.